everyone, and welcome to my broadcast. I said that I would be back on at 7 o'clock. It's a little bit after 7 a.m., but I'm here nonetheless, so let's get right into it. This broadcast is about magical records. It's so important for witches to keep accurate or as accurate records of their magical workings, so that if a spell, ritual, hex, or curse goes wrong, goes bust, they can go back to those records and find out what went wrong. A magical record entails the time you did a spell, the moon phase, the gods, the goddesses, the ancestors, the deities, the familiars, the spirit animals, anything supernatural that you work with. A magical record indicates how you may have been feeling at that time, any intuitive messages you may have received from the Queen of Witches, Hecate, anything negative you may have been feeling from the supernatural world or the world of the dead. A magical record is so important for the advancement of a witch, especially a new witch, because you don't want to have too many mistakes when you are doing witchcraft. You want to be able to reference when something goes right and when something goes wrong. If you don't have anything to reference to, you're not going to live a magical filled life. You have to keep accurate records. Even if you don't feel like keeping records, you can very easily write it down on a loose leaf sheet of paper and put it in a binder. Write it down on a napkin and put it in your book of shadows or in your grimoire. Put it somewhere where you can go back and get it. Don't just write it down and then leave it out, especially if you write your record down on a napkin. Most likely you will throw that napkin in the garbage, and you don't want anybody else, especially if you have a nosy neighbor going through your trash looking for evidence of you doing witchcraft or you doing so-called black magic and using it against you. Your book of shadows should contain your magical workings, the spells, the rituals, the hexes, the curses that you write, and any spell work that you may have gotten inspiration from another witch or another high priest or another high priestess that have worked for you. A good magical record. This is so important. Please catch this, witches. It's so important that your magical record is kept private. It's kept private. Not every single witch is your friend, okay? Not everybody that smiles in your face is your friend. Some things as witches and witchcraft should be kept solely to you. Some things should be kept private. Some things you should not talk about in the craft, especially witchcraft that involves your bloodline, because you might have enemies that may not call themselves witches. They might just call themselves practitioners of magic or practitioners of black magic and use it against you. So you have to choose very carefully. You choose very carefully by listening to your intuition, your inner compass, to find out who you should confide in and who you should shut up around. Your magical record should solely be either just for you, your family, or the coven that you are a part of. Your magical record should contain everything you did for that spell. Everything you did for that spell. All of the ingredients, all of the crystals, the candles, the essential oils, the herbs, any gods, goddesses, deities, Hecate, any spirit animals, any familiars that you worked alongside. Don't leave anything out. If you think something does not belong in your magical record, put it in your magical record. It belongs there. It belongs there. Personally, I would suggest that If you have a safety deposit box at the bank, put it in the safety deposit box at the bank. You see, I live alone, so I can have my book of shadows out. But if you don't live alone and you do have a safety deposit box at the bank, put it in there. Put it in your P.O. box. Get a get a safe with a combination or a key or an electrical combination. Put it in there. But you don't want anybody else that you don't trust to have access to your magical records. You don't want that information to get out there because you never know what that person, which or non-magical person, might use it against you. You really have to keep some things to yourself, and your magical workings is one of them. It's one of them. Can you save this live? You can, I'll save it. I'll save this live for the replay on my IGTV channel. But if you can, what is it called? Screen record. You can screen record and upload it to your own social media platforms. That's fine. Your magical records holds a part of you as a witch within its pages. Your magical record holds a part of you as a witch in those pages. Don't get me wrong. You're still yourself. You will always still be yourself. That's never going to change. But a part of you are within those pages. When you are at your altar, you are in a zone. You are in your own vibe. You are in your own lane. You are in your own magical circle that should never be penetrated. It should never be penetrated naturally or supernaturally. You should not have, anything supernatural that you don't want there trying to weasel itself into your magical circle. You don't want that, because then it will fuck with your magical workings. And you don't want to have a fucked up spell or a fucked up curse or a fucked up hex. You don't want that. You don't want to go down that route, okay? No. You don't want to do that. Your magical record is everything you did in that spell. From having a ritual bath before actually doing a ritual, to how you felt after the spell, ritual, curse, or hex was completed. Put everything in there. Don't leave not one thing out. You don't have to include any interruptions that may have happened when you were doing witchcraft, but you can, so that next time when you reference back to your magical records, you will know what that interruption was and how to avoid it. That's why witches do witchcraft at night, because it's easier, because most of the house has settled down. Most of the world has settled down. Most people are asleep, and it's easier to work at night. Right now, I have to check the calendar, but the moon is going to be full soon. I have to check. I see the full moon outside my window right now. It's becoming full. The goddess is getting to the heights of her power. I have to check the date to see when the moon will be full. But put down everything. Especially, I always find to especially put down when the moon is full, or any phase of the moon. Even if you are not a witch, you know that the moon affects us here on earth. Absolutely. Absolutely it does. Because the moon is Hecate. Hecate is the queen of witches. We look to her for successful witchcraft. We look to Hecate for having real, significant, and permanently, not just short-term, permanently positive change in our life. We don't have to beg. We don't have to go into a prayer closet. We don't have to cry and weep and speak in tongues and all that type of bullshit, because it is bullshit. Going back to your magical record. When you finish your magical record, there's nothing else to do. You can review what you wrote down and make sure you have not let anything out, that you have not forgotten anything. But your magical record is a reference for everything you did in that spell work. It's a reference for everything you did. You can even record yourself doing witchcraft and keep it in a past. You can record yourself doing witchcraft and keep it in a password protected file on your phone, tablet, computer, laptop, desktop, and then reference it back. Your magical record does not have to be a booklet. It does not have to be a black and white composition notebook. It can be anything, as long as it is not accessible to other people. Because a lot of witches, most witches I should say, or better yet, all witches write something down in their magical record that they don't want anybody else to know. Not even other witches, not even other high priests or high priestesses like myself. Some things are meant to be private. So witches go to the extreme to protect their magical records. That's why I was just saying, if you have a safety deposit box in the bank, put your magical record book, USB drive, put it in that safety deposit box at the bank, because you will hopefully have the only key to that safety deposit box. Put it, invest in a good safe. Put it behind bulletproof glass. Put it inside of a chest with many, many locks. Do something. There are some things in witches and magical records that you don't want the public to ever see, because then they might find out that you are a witch, obviously, or they might find out who you really are. A magical record is not to be confused with a diary or journal. A magical record is everything that you did at the altar when you did that spell, ritual, hex, or curse. And that information should be nobody else's business but you, the witch who was at the altar. Or if you are part of a coven, it should not be any business but the coven's business of what goes into that magical record. You always want to have something to reference to. You don't want to be one of those witches that say, damn, I should not have written down my magical records on a napkin and then threw that napkin in the garbage. No, I can't get it back. You don't want to be one of those. It's clumsy, it's sloppy, and it's lazy to leave a magical record just laying around. Do not do that. Do not do that. You don't want to leave that around. Because witches have a lot of enemies. It's not just the Christians. It's other witches. It's the neighbors who call the police on us for doing magic outside on our own property underneath a full moon. You just never know. You need to have some care, some real care for your magical record. The difference between a magical record and a book of shadows: the book of shadows contains the spells. The magical record is everything you did leading up to the spell work. So that's the difference between a magical record and a book of shadows. The same way you treat your book of shadows, however you keep it organized, is the same way you need to keep your magical record. The same exact way. Don't leave it out in the open. Don't let people touch it. Don't let people look through it. Don't let people get away with, oh, I'm just curious. Oh, I just want to see. Oh, show me. Oh, prove to me. You don't owe anybody a explanation for your spiritual practice. It's nobody's goddamn business. Tell them that. It's none of your goddamn business about my spiritual practice. Because it's not. At all. At all. I'll go as far as to say, if somebody was to touch my book of shadows, I would never speak to that person again. We have nothing to talk about. Literally nothing. Nothing. Because you know how important my book of shadows is. You know how important my magical records are. And here you are touching them. Fuck you. Simple as that. You know, I'm a Scorpio, so I tell it like it is. I give it to you straight. Your magical record also, speaking of the zodiac, your magical record also tells you what zodiac the moon, the sun was in when you were doing witchcraft. If you add or mix astrology with witchcraft, which you absolutely can, because we know it's not just the moon that affects us here on Earth. It's all 9 planets, and yes, Pluto is still a planet that affects us here on Earth. It does. Keep close your magical record and keep close of who has access to it, because you don't want that information out there. Your magical record should be a reference to all things that you did at the altar leading up to the spell work. So thank you guys for joining me on this short broadcast, and I'm going to come on tomorrow afternoon. Remember to turn on notifications to be notified when I've started broadcasting live, and I will speak to you guys again soon. Bye everyone.